Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. To those of you tuning in, welcome. This morning I am struggling with my allergies big time. So I don't know how long I'm gonna have. I am currently medicated significantly. So we'll see how that flows. So if I say something crazy, blame the meds. Last week, I had a lesson, and God, in his providential way, took over. Because it is his show. Let's just be real. There's a blend of things that are transpiring. Well, let me say this. You all have to really suffer through my walk with God. And what I mean by that is, God doesn't just give me everything all at once. So I'll get stuff and he'll piece it together, and I'll get the on-ramp, I'll get on the freeway, and I'll be rolling for a while, and then down the road it becomes clearer and more clear what he's doing. Last week represented for me in prayer what this series is about. Series is on forgiveness. And there are several gifts, and I'm using my words measured, because I don't want to say something crazy, because I'm very serious right now. There are various gifts that I have that I am very comfortable with, and then there are gifts I have I am not at all comfortable with. And within that realm, the one I'm probably the least comfortable with publicly, the most comfortable with privately, is the prophetic gift. If you're new to church, just check out for a minute. I'll explain it later. I have a gift to teach. I have a gift of counsel. But woven within that is the gift of prophecy. I don't see dead people, but I do see stuff. I'm going to track back to the previous election. And this is not a political statement, and people left the church because they thought I was turning political. That's fine, because I'll just assume you don't know my heart. And you serve no purpose here in terms of benefiting and edifying yourself if you can't connect with my heart, because the stuff I do with my head will only get you 10 miles down the road. It's that spare tire in the back of your car that, yeah, it'll get you somewhere, but you ain't gonna drive with it. So you have to know my heart for me to be able to talk to you and share with you at the level I need to share with you. Some of you might want to testify through here for your life to transform. So I see stuff a lot, and I don't share much of it. God showed me something prior to the last election, which is why I spoke ahead of the election. And what he showed me was not the danger of Trump, which is what people interpreted. But what I saw was connected to something I had said prior to that, and I just need you to follow me this morning. For those of you who were here, I announced that from a spiritual standpoint, the spirit of slavery had been dethroned with Obama's election. Because if you have the spirit of slavery, that spirit of slavery, if it's the ark spirit over the country, it is not letting an African. You didn't hear what I just said. Run the country. Oh, I want you to get what I just said. Think about this. The first black president, we want to say was an African American. He was an African. His dad was an African. You have no idea from a spirit realm standpoint what that means. I got it. But it was a titanic shift in the spirit realm. Remember what we prayed about last week? We call on his name. You'll see a shift in the atmosphere. That was a titanic shift in the atmosphere relative to the answering of prayers for centuries. You still with me? So with that spirit dethroned, and it wasn't the first time that spirit had been dethroned, the spirit had actually been dethroned once more. And that was after the Civil War. But what happened after the Civil War is spirits do what they do. They go out, they let the house remain swept clean, and then they go out and they gather more spirits and they come back stronger. Follow me, take the ride. If you think I'm doing spooky stuff, sorry. But that's their pattern. So I said, there will be a gap where there is a battle. Because somebody's got to replace that spirit, or some spirit has to replace that spirit. Chief among the one vying for the position would be the incumbent spirit, which is the spirit of slavery. Slavery goes out, gathers, circle back around, stronger, vying for the position. You follow me? Okay, so I've seen that. I announced it. Understand, I'm not guessing when I start talking like that. Not guessing. Not projecting. I see what's coming. So I posted it. And God told me to post it the last 3 days before the election because he didn't want no debate about it. And if you go back over and you read that post, no one commented on the core statement I made. And the core statement I made was simply this: I do not fear Trump at all. What I fear is his followers. And what they want to do. Watch this. Out of their anger. I also commented, that's not just specific to them. That's specific to extremists, hence the term extreme. It just so happens this is the group on display at this moment. Because what they're searching for is power. And there is a difference between the desire for power to be empowered and to represent. I need you to follow me on this. There's a difference between being representative, which is what our call is, by the way. We are called not to be in power, we are called to be representatives. And we are in authority, i.e. authorized, to the extent we represent. When we stop representing, then we have no authority, and then we decline into compromise. Still with me? So in the realm of political pursuit, the extreme edges of all sides pursue power because they believe they have irrefutable principles. I don't know what you all gonna call us when I'm done, but whatever. And again, I'm not being flippant, if you haven't figured this out about me, and this is the whole issue of my heart, sometimes with me, you just gotta take the ride. And trust me, I'm headed somewhere. Okay. This morning, God connected it back further to something I did that I had completely forgot about. But when I was on the Oprah Winfrey show, I made a prophetic announcement on the show that I had completely forgot about. Let me tell you what they asked me to speak on there. It was right at the time when Bill Clinton raped an intern, molested an intern. So that specific show, Oprah Winfrey wanted to talk about the abuse of men in power. So she had me come on because she couldn't find anybody really who would go on national TV and essentially had that conversation about, here was my opening statement. My opening statement was, you've asked the wrong question. All of the questions about Clinton were about the economy. And do you approve of him running the economy? I said, you've asked the wrong question, because running the economy is not the core of his job description. I said, here's the parallel. If I'm a father and my wife and I separate and I pay my child support, but I don't do nothing with the children, am I a good father? And I simply said, there has to be more to being the president than policy. I'll give you my core argument for that whole show. My core argument was, the problem is not now. The problem is that a man is staying in power as if we don't have other options, with credibility and character. Here's what I said. Nixon had the character to resign. What Clinton is setting in place, someone's going to come along and they're not going to know they need to quit, because they're going to embed themselves in what I did well. So it shouldn't matter how I'm living. And I said it under, I said, here's going to be your problem. Somebody's going to take that principle and they're going to put it on steroids. I want you to understand, when I look at it, I see spiritual things, not politics and personalities. One of the papers I wrote for a class, the teacher gave me a B. She said, "You earned an A+. I am still struggling with your concept." And she literally wrote that in the commentary on the paper. And what I had wrote was that Obama and Bush were essentially fundamentally the same types of managers once you get past the politics. By the way, of the ex-presidents, the closest friendship right now is the two who practice laissez-faire leadership, which works if you have the right people in place. It does not work if you have the wrong people in place, because in laissez-faire, you let people do their jobs. You don't hover over them. But if you've got a Secretary of Defense who is basically crazy and you got a vice president who is power mad, then it's not going to work till you put check on that power. Yeah. Otherwise, you wind up going after 9/11 stuff in countries that had nothing to do with it. So you wind up having to fire your Secretary of Defense, bring a sane one in. Yeah, I'm going somewhere with this. So I've watched that, and I've been watching it. The thing I did on Sister I'm Sorry wound up being the precursor to the, how do I put it? It was an early recognition that women had been sexually abused at such a high level in our culture, particularly in the African American community, that we could never move forward till we said, "Sister, I'm sorry." That's how I first got on the Oprah Winfrey Show. History lesson. I could see that coming. And I saw it in his presidency, that he does not believe anything morally should disqualify him. And his followers are in a cult. Just do with it whatever you want. They're in a cult. Because if I can say my plan is to rape women as a strategy for dating, and you don't have the self-interest to check me, then shame on you. You're probably in a cult. Because you're 5 seconds away from Nike's, never mind. And again, I'm in bunk beds and drinking Kool-Aid. You are. You have become a subculture. And I'm not trying to convince anybody to come out of the cult. Only God could judge you now, according to Tupac. And I'm being very real and very serious. This is me. This is what you got. So I saw that, and I followed that. And I'm being very serious. God wouldn't let me not speak on it. So I wrote the post. And then January 6th happened. I'll just say I was dead on right. We lost a lot of members because of me. I could read you some of the letters of how disappointed people were in me, that I had taken sides and fallen for the bait, that my brain had been washed. I'm going to just be as cold-blooded and as real as the place I grew up in and just tell you, You want to do reason against me, you're probably going to lose. In terms of rationalizing around stuff and having a political debate with me, because I'm very good at it, because I am as comfortable in both sides. And I don't feel nothing, because I can play the advocate and I can play both sides. I don't feel nothing about it because my God is always sovereign. So whatever side I take, I'm just arguing for sport while you're arguing your identity.
Let's talk about it. Talk about it for real. Yeah.
So I got I'm disappointed in you, and I never thought you'd fall like this, and you fall for the okey doke and stuff like that. As if somehow I'm not the one who walked you out of the darkest night you've ever had into the daylight where you could do politics and not wake up in that fog of spiritual decay you were in prior to us knowing one another. But now all of a sudden, you've turned the lens back around and you got it. That's just a sign of how effective God's ministry through me was in your life, that you can now feel comfortable to judge me. It just is, to me, a sign of the elevation of your deliverance, that you now have the free time to ponder me as if I'm crazy. So that thing worked, because you're not overwhelmed and calling me every 5 minutes. I have not veered off course. So you get to that election, then you have January 6th. January 6th validates what I thought about the extremist dynamic of it. So we get to forgiveness. And what God has shown me is the church, I mean globally, especially here in America, and I talked some about this, has never not been a conflicted entity. And what do I mean by that? The church in America has always been at war with the kingdom of God. Because it wrote what we would call the doctrinal treatise for othering people. For othering people. It wrote the doctrine of why God honors the enslavement, the abuse, the molestation, the just heinous stuff. And I get it. America didn't invent slavery, but you did. You kind of did, Alexis. You looked at the BMW, looked at the Mercedes, and said, I can do that. And I can make one of those now that I see what it looks like. And that's essentially. But again, all of that is tied to a spiritual realm. Every country, every region has a spirit over it that governs it and controls it and keeps it locked in some form of division and sin. You think it's accidental what's happening in the Middle East? It's just random chance? It's not random chance. You have the epic struggle between demonic entities. Anybody here? Yeah. And what you have now is a battle, not a campaign. Not in the sense that you think. and the church has been at war. Here's what God told me. I want my church back. Because my bride has been out. Fill in the blank. God wants his bride back. There's a prophet whose wife went into prostitution to mirror and reflect how God was viewing. When God looks at the church in America, that is what the church in America has been since the founding of the country. It has been in, and I hope I can say this, I'll just say the last part of it, dumb. You can fill in the front part, but it's been in dumb since. It's never been righteous. It's never been righteous. And it's always been late. Late. All of its righteousness is always spoken after somebody else fought. So even when it talks about equality for minorities now, as if it was something it fought for. It did not. It fought against it, delayed it by creating academies and schools to get government funding so that it wouldn't have to integrate. I could start going down the list of universities, but I'll stick with the one I graduated from. Liberty University was first an academy because they did not want to integrate. And so they built the academy to take their kids out of public school and then fought for. Now, understand, this is why the one Christian evangelical president, one we've ever had, is hated. Can anybody tell me who the one evangelical president we had? It was Jimmy Carter. He is the most hated by Christian conservatives. And he is the only one that is one of them. Now, what he's hated for is something Nixon should have took credit for, which is Nixon's administration essentially said, if you pull your kids out of school and you fund them in these academies, you're not getting federal funds for a place that won't allow federal people to attend. Now, that was the Nixon administration. Carter doubled down on it, and that's where the problem began. And that's the rise of the conservative movement in America. Because from Carter on, you now have the moral majority. You got to put this stuff together, and you got to see how the timeline's linked. Why would I need a moral majority? Because the world is becoming immoral. And in becoming immoral, you got to find others to blame. Now, the cast of others can be anything. They can be gay, they can be white, they can be women, they could be ideas. It doesn't matter. As long as you have an other to dump your hatred on. And to say, this is the reason why your life ain't right. Never mind my policies. So full circle. That's what I'm tracking. That's what's in my spirit this morning, is watching all that and watching us, seeing where we are. And what I became overwhelmed with last week was the nature and level of conflict in this house, in your hearts. And again, I said I had a prophetic gift. Let me tell you what I disobeyed God on. I disobeyed God to this extent. I saw into your individual lives. And God wanted me to walk to individuals and tell them, this is what you're dealing with. It's already been handled. You just need to release the conflict. I didn't do it for two reasons. Fear, because you don't want to say the wrong thing. And the fact that we don't have a roving camera. So then how does that look? Pastor all out the frame, you hearing stuff. That's just not good TV. Let's be real. It's not. So, Well, and that was my compromise. I did that. But that wasn't, remember, it wasn't what I was told to do. So I accommodated it so that I could come back and say, I did kill everybody. Some of you would have to know scripture to know what I said. I did kill everybody. Well, what are the sheep that I hear in the background? So I need to apologize for not being fully obedient. And my hope is it does not compromise your deliverance. But I will say this. The ones I was supposed to talk to, you know. Because God managed to speak to you directly. He's talking to you. That's God accommodating my disobedience and not having you suffer the compromise of my disobedience. So what has this all been about? And I'm trying to bring it all together. Most of you are on social media. Most of you are consuming, I don't even know, information in a way you don't realize is compromising your spirit. Because you're consuming it in conflict, not in conversation. Everything that's presented from the news, and I'm now talking to the next generation, your love of snarky is demonic. I'm talking to the kids. Your love of getting clowned and all that is just straight demonic. And you don't even know it. Because social media mostly is about shame. And shaming people. And showing people in their most compromised ways. And again, I have the revelation, but I also have the addiction like many of you. I'm trying to address my addiction. Here's what I'm noticing. The more I study forgiveness, the more demonic it looks, the more nasty it looks. And now, instead of laughing, I'm dealing with my guilt. If you take the top 5 people presenting the news, if you take the top 5 people presenting lifestyle, it's all conflict driven. clowning people. You can't just say something happened without sarcasm in the follow-up, or the news looks like SNL. You honestly couldn't tell the difference. What does all this have to do with anything? Romans 3:23. Massive introduction. It wasn't. It was a clarifying statement. Romans 3:23 is very famous in terms of, if you've been in church for any reasonable amount of time, you've heard this. And you should be as familiar with this as you are with John 3:16. In fact, before I hit you with John 3:16, I'm going to hit you with this. Because John 3:16 don't make no sense if you don't understand Romans 3:23. So what does it say? Somebody out loud. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Here's what it is saying. There is a connection between sin and God's glory always. It cannot be severed. Now, sin literally means to miss the mark. Here's what it's saying. All have fallen short. Let me say that again. All have missed the mark and fallen short of God's glory. I want you to hear that. Why is this important? Because the church, Western American church, defines sin as moral violation, the violation of something relative to a morality. That's how sin is defined. Cheating on your spouse, sexual alphabet, abortion, stealing. Well, not stealing if you do it for a righteous cause. You just got to have the right reason for doing it. Yeah. There it is, eminent domain, essentially. So I want you to understand, he's really defining sin as anything that falls short of God's glory. If you don't have that definition, you will be enculturated to come after people you're not called to minister to. Does everybody, if you have anything other than fallen short of the glory of God and all, then you're going to miss it. You're going to miss what sin really is, because what sin really is missing the mark of God's glory. God's glory is not manifested in his rules. Otherwise, if it were, God would have no glory till he created the earth. Oh, think about that for a minute. I just jacked your mind up. Because if it's in the rules don't come into play till God creates the earth and then gives us rules to follow. And in following those rules, God develops glory. So I created the whole thing. No glory in that. That the only glory I can receive is glory connected to me telling y'all what to do. And you actually following it. So I'm up in heaven just struggling to get some glory. Because there's a glory drought in heaven. Because y'all won't act right. And yet, the description of heaven is that glory is just taking place. Like they've got that thing running 24/7. It's like a glory system. Crowns being casted down and bowing down and all kinds. So it looks like glory is just happening there. I'm going to give you a different definition of glory. Glory is, you ready? The revelation of God's character. That's what glory is. Glory is the revelation of God's character. And it is inherent in his divinity. Glory is inherent in his divinity. It is manifested through revelation of his character. Okay? In other words, the only access you have to God's glory is limited to your perception. But your perception doesn't cap his glory. It's just what you can see. The best example of this is found in Scripture when Moses observes the burning bush and he says, I want to see you. And God says, essentially, that's a death sentence. Because if you see me in all my glory, there's not even a word description for what will happen to you. There's not even really, you'll die. Might be more than that. So what he says is, I will come by, cover you, and then as I'm leaving, I'll let you see my backside. And then no one will be able to look into your face. Off of my backside reflecting in your front